And a very good morning to you. We're live from London. You're listening to Monocle on Sunday with me, Emma Nelson. Welcome. Coming up today, my guests will share their views on the week's biggest stories. Tina Fordham's in the studio. Good morning, Tina. And Nina dos Santos is here. Nina, hello. What have you spotted?
Good morning. Well, I think it's impossible to start talking about anything with regards to world affairs without mentioning the protests in Iran that have happened overnight. Hundreds of people are said to have lost their lives. There's an information blackout currently blanketing the whole country. And Donald Trump has threatened to get involved, but the theocracy of Tehran has said that it could retaliate quite significantly against US bases in the Middle East. So, very tense moment for the international world order.
Thank you for that. We'll get the latest from Ljubljana.
I'm Monocle's man in the Balkans, Guy de Launey, and in my roundup from the region, I'll be revealing where to ski for free, how many tourists are heading to Croatia, and who's trying to lose their Slovenian accent.
More from Guy a little later. Plus, we'll be checking in with our editorial director, Tyler Brûlé, and Fiona Wilson joining us on the line from our Tokyo studio. It's the 11th of January 2026, live from London. This is Monocle on Sunday.
Live from London, this is Monocle on Sunday with Emma Nelson.
Let's bring in today's panellists, Nina dos Santos, international broadcast correspondent and former CNN Europe editor, and Tina Fordham, geopolitical strategist and founder of Fordham Global Insights. Good morning.
Good morning.
How have your weeks been? We'll get to the serious stuff in a minute. There is plenty to get through. I don't think anybody quite expected how 2026 would start off. But Tina, how's your week been?
Well, I actually did have Maduro exit on my bingo card and set it in December on our webcast to clients. And so with that in mind, my week has been intense because I was one of the few people who saw this coming, although not the timing. And I did think he would go for a more cushy exile, Maduro.
OK, I think probably he might have wanted that option as well. Not quite sure whether a New York jail is his ideal travel destination. How about you, Nina? What have you been doing?
I can barely remember it because every time I wake up at the weekend, I find myself on air talking about some other change of regime, usually that the United States is involved in. I've spent the last few days obviously talking about Venezuela. When that happened, just a couple of days after the New Year, I was down in deepest Devon at a friend's place, sort of hoping to be cut off from world events. And, with the events in the Swiss mountain fire, I covered that quite extensively over the first couple of days of January, then Venezuela. Now potentially Greenland, Iran, you name it. It's almost, there's no point in taking any time off or going to sleep these days because you wake up and the world order's changed the next morning.
Well, you might miss something transformational.
Yeah. And then it will have been surpassed by something else. This is something that you learn, that we all learn very, very quickly. Let us, in this world of tremendous change and turbulence, let's have something constant and reassuring. Let's have our editorial director, Tyler Brûlé, on the line from Tokyo. A very good evening to you, Tyler.
Good evening, but let's not leave out Fiona Wilson, our bureau chief.
Indeed. Fiona Wilson, good evening to you, Monocle's Tokyo bureau chief. Oh, would I ever dare, Fiona, to leave you out of the running order? How's life where you are?
I know you wouldn't forget me, Emma, don't worry. Yes, it's good. We are in this sort of lovely bit of the Japanese winter where it's just sunny skies all the time. Although Tyler did arrive in quite a spectacular windstorm.
Well, listen, Emma, I wrote the column a little bit too early. So I wrote my column yesterday on the plane. It was all going brilliantly. There's like a light, like I would just call it a dusting. There was just blowing snow at the airport. And then they said, well, we're going to be, maybe 15 minutes late, pushing back. And then 15 became 30 minutes, became an hour, became a 4-hour delay. And it was, then listen, if of course I was heading from Zurich to Narita. You get to that point, it's already a 12-hour flight. And I was thinking, oh my goodness, at this 3.5 hour point, are they going to then have to change the crew as well? And then there'd be another delay. Anyway, we managed to make it out. But as Fiona said, on approach to Tokyo, it was incredibly bumpy. And then I thought we were going to have to do a go-round because it was pretty dicey about maybe 100 meters above the runway. But anyway, they got the 777 Beast solidly on the runway. But I said, Fiona, driving in, the bamboo was practically sort of smacking the motorway. The weather is quite crazier. But as you said, this is the time of year, though. It's just big, beautiful skies. It was sunny, and it looks like that for the rest of the week, in fact.
It does. Yeah, you've got a nice run of pure sunshine.
Amazing. So what are you up to over there? I know that the column this week is very much a sort of mixture of work and family, isn't it, Tyler? So tell us all the hotspots.
Well, listen, it is. My mom hasn't been in Japan for about 10 years, and I thought it was Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, and I said, Mom, surprise, let's go to Japan. I knew that I had this trip coming up, and but before I surprised her, I had to check on the air miles, and there were indeed enough, which was great. And so it's 4 days of work, and then thankfully there's friends and colleagues here as well who can look after Mom when I'm running around. But it already started off, Fiona, we didn't even talk about this yet. So I was supposed to go to Shiseido Parlor for lunch. That's what the column says. Anyway, that wasn't happening because I was still in the air at that point. Anyway, so we were with our friend Noriko, and we went to Teddy Brown Burgers, TB Burgers. I don't know if you've been. It's in Hiro. Knockout. Just absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, it's one of the great mysteries of Tokyo, or surprises maybe. It's that pizza and burgers are absolutely fantastic in Tokyo. Have you seen there's a new one on our street as well?
No, I've only gone from, we're talking about teddy bears. My teddy bear hairdo that I always get when I come here as well, but that's a whole other conversation.
Has it happened yet, Tyler?
It's happened, suppressed though by the headphones that I'm sporting at the moment.
Okay, how are we looking this evening? Sorry, talk us through the look.
Fiona's seen this look so many times over practically decades at this point.
Okay, maybe Fiona.
The barber that Tyler frequents is an absolute sort of neighbourhood favourite, and pretty much everyone I know goes there. And yeah, it's kind of old school. They really look after you. They've got the foot massage. They're doing the hot towels. It looks quite relaxing. I did walk by and I said to Tyler, I saw you were in there, but I thought, no, you know what? That's a bit of quiet time, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's one of these barbers. It's a proper barber. There are 3-year-olds in the booster seat, and there are gentlemen with walkers as well, and everything in between. It's a fantastic. Listen, we've written about them a few times. You want to talk about sort of sense of community and people just dropping in, and it's 45 minutes of happiness.
And what does the hair look like now? And what happens in that chair that happens nowhere else?
Well, I mean, Fiona can talk about what the hair looks like. I can tell you about just the services, which it's a great haircut. But in Japan, so they shave your whole face. Like in Japan, they shave your forehead, they shave your cheeks. It's sort of unlike. There's a lot of time and attention, not in a sort of a strange Turkish way, but there's time and attention given to eyebrows, etc. But there's no threading involved in Japan. But there's a lot of very, very special razors, and that's just the standard course. There's ear cleaning as well as part of it.
Brilliant! I can't begin to tell you the faces that are being pulled in London.
It's a bit early in the morning.
That is the barber in Japan, the barber experience.
Forehead threading.
The forehead shaving.
No
we're
threading.
Not. Do you mind if we don't go there, Tyler? Or would you like to go there and take us out?
With threading, I'm not so. I don't know. I'm not so big on the whole threading thing.
Okay, Fiona, how's he looking?
Look, it's what a haircut's supposed to do. You kind of look like yourself, but better. Is that it? Your best self.
Yeah, and almost like that. You've not seen me for a month, but it sort of doesn't really look like you. And people always say, "Oh, did you get a haircut?" It's like, yeah, sort of, but not really.
No, in a good way. Nobody needs a big kind of show-stopping hairdo at the beginning of January.
But I have to say, though, there's a bit of an upsell when you go there. They've all reinvented themselves every single time you go in. They're blonde. There's mullets. There's all kinds of things going on at Cut Salon Ban. Ban Cut Salon? What is it, Fiona?
I think it's Cut Salon Ban.
It's Cut Salon Ban.
We just call them the Ban Chans.
We call them the Ban Chans, exactly. And anyway, Emma, next time you come, there's no, I don't know, Fiona, I've seen the odd, well, normally the women are in there about maybe over 90, in fact, as well.
What are you saying,
as part
Tyler?
of the community. No, it's not for you. Not just because of it's a guy's show.
Very neat,
anyway,
very neatly rescued.
That's that.
Fiona,
no matter.
What is the equivalent if you and I were going to go for a full works? Where would we be going for this?
I mean, you're in Tokyo. There are about 1 million hair salons, and frankly, you need to give up a whole day. I just don't have the time for it. They like to do the full treatment. I mean, you've heard all about it. The big thing here are these hair spas where they kind of claim to reinvent the actual hair. I mean, they're taking it to new levels. And these amazing new hair dryers they're using, which we've always been taught hairdryers are bad for your hair. These ones apparently improve your hair.
Are we talking
Don't ask me.
Rifa?
Yes, exactly.
In Ginza now, it's a 3-story temple. So for Mr. Dyson Chow, I mean, he's done. Rifa is a whole new world. It is brushes, it is hair dryers, and these are hair dryers. It's also the opposite in terms of Dyson design. These are not minimalist. These are completely over the top. If they had hair dryers at Versailles once upon a time, this would have been the deal. And they take the hair. Well, the hair industry is very serious. We even know there's a hotel around the corner here, which made a name. Well, the business sort of made a name for itself because they have wedding chapels all over Japan. But the wedding chapels, they really took off because they were doing weddings on the days that salons were closed. So of course, you work in a salon in Japan, you can't have the traditional Saturday wedding or a Sunday wedding. I think Fiona's at I don't know what days they were sort of operating, but Tuesdays, Wednesdays, or whenever salons are closed. So that's how important the industry is, that you can sort of have a spin-off business just marrying people who are chopping hair and have a massive chapel business up and down the country.
Fiona, talk us through these giant hair dryers that Tyler was talking about.
They're not giant.
Really?
They're so delicate you can put them in your breast pocket. No one would even see it.
My goodness.
I feel fantastically underqualified to talk about this subject, to be quite honest. But I have noticed as I travel around Japan, these things have been popping up everywhere. I'm guessing it's a sort of marketing thing. Let's get these hair dryers everywhere. Yeah, I don't know. And then they've opened this spectacular new sort of headquarters where you can go and try these things. They have a slightly curious way of opening. And the first time I tried one, I had to abandon it because I didn't realise you had to twist the handle.
Right, yeah.
You tried that?
No, I forgot. I was staying somewhere recently that they had the Rifa, and then I noticed that they've got these shop-in-shops. I think this could be one of the first, let's say, personal care brands that one of the luxury. I wouldn't even be surprised if LVMH has a small stake in this company. I don't think they do at the moment, but they're really positioning themselves. Emma, they're in the heart of Ginza, across the street from Ferragamo. They're just practically next door to Dior. So it sort of makes sense, actually. Why shouldn't you have an electronic personal care brand, which is as important and maybe, of course, has the multiples that would also match the likes of Hermes or another LVMH brand? Indeed.
I mean, Bernard Arnault's got a fine head of hair, so I think there's oodles of potential for there. Tell us about hotel hair dryers, though, because that is the one thing that every single hotel fails at on Earth.
Well, I was like checking in with my mom. I ran by mom's room to pick her up. I think there was a Rifa in the room as well. So, this is of course, where are you going to sample? Where are you going to experience a new type of hairdryer? Well, it's probably going to be in a hotel. Sampling is believing. I'm still amazed though, and this is what the one strange thing. I don't know why the Dyson hairdryer needs to come with a whole plug-in station unit. Can't it just sit in a bag in a drawer? But I think they've done a real upsell when they've gone to these hotels saying, okay, take 200 hair dryers, but it needs the complete docking station as well. Not necessary.
Let's bring in Nina dos Santos here. We've got Nina and Tina today in the studio. That's the first time I've said it. I'll say it again. Nina, you were nodding when you were talking about when Tyler was mentioning the whole paraphernalia attached to an upmarket hairdryer, which at the end of the day is a little machine that blows hot air to everybody.
That's right. Well, I remember when my parents redid a big house not far from here in central London, and my father installed all of these hairdrying units across all of our bathrooms, which we couldn't stand, that were the sort of prototype to exactly what Tyler was talking about. And I know that, Tyler, you've often mentioned that hotel experiences often, guide people in inspiration. My late father was an extensive traveller around different parts of the world, and probably that's where he got this idea back from. But I was just groaning, with memories of 20, maybe 30 odd years ago, when this new technology popped up in our house. And yeah, I think it's ghastly. I totally agree. I think you need to just have a great hairdryer, put it in the drawer and take it out when you need it. But I want to know what these Japanese hairdryers are. I've actually made a note of them, because if they can make your hair better, after 20 odd years in the broadcasting industry, having my hair tugged, I'd really go for it, even if I had to import one from Japan.
I have a feeling Fiona's going to be spending some time with the chief marketing officer or the creative director soon, so she can tell you all about it.
If not, there are 3 people in London who'd be absolutely happy to make that phone call as well. We're absolutely agog that at 9:15 in London, the biggest story on earth is where do we get our hairdryers from? Fiona, have these amazing hairdryers permeated every Japanese household now?
You know what? They are rather expensive. Let me tell you, this is a luxury product. I mean, hundreds of pounds we're talking. And I do think they're probably going for what Toto did, the makers of the famous washlet, which was, if you try it, you won't go back. And I think that's what they're thinking is let everyone have a go with these things. But no, they cost a fortune. So you have to be quite committed to better hair.
Committed to your hair.
I am. I will be.
You are.
Let's talk about anything else you've spotted while you've been out in Tokyo, Tyler. There's an article in The Economist, which is it's not a publication we mention a great deal on the radio here, but it has written about whether Japan has a problem with foreigners, and it's to do with the opening up and closing down of the economy. What are your thoughts on it?
Well, listen, Fiona and I were talking about this before we went on air. Not a particularly news story. Surprised that they're trotting it out. But of course, I was even looking at, I'm not sure if it was the Japan News, Fiona, or the Japan Times, but there's also a story about how foreigners can come together. Extraordinary photos of people doing calisthenics, or I couldn't even tell if it was intimacy coaching. I don't know what this was all about.
It's the same thing, apparently.
Could be, but anyway, listen. This is something which is ongoing. We've touched on various aspects of it, and I listen. I feel it's a bit of a confused story because part of it, if people, and we're talking about, listen, the country is absolutely overrun with tourists at the moment. I was even thinking January, it's going to be quite calm. This is not, the changing of leaves. This is, we're still a couple of months away from Sakura season. No, absolutely not. At Tokyo, rammed with tourists from all over the place. Fiona, I don't know what your view is, but I think part of it is, you come to Japan, respect Japan. You need to do it on our terms, not sort of import all of your odd habits and requests to, of course, a nation which is famous for hospitality on one side, and maybe you should enjoy what the Japanese have to offer rather than thinking that you're in a mini mall in San Diego.
I mean, I think we're in a funny kind of transition period. You look at the numbers. 10 years ago, there were, I think, just over 2 million foreign residents, and there are about to be 4 million. Now, that's a huge change in 10 years, and I think that's also been the case with the tourism numbers. Just the escalation has been very, very quick, and I think that's been the hard thing. It's this very high-speed adjustment, and that's created problems. People have been welcoming. Everyone's got their own way of doing things. And, Japan has very particular ways of doing things, which I've always found absolutely charming, but some people think could be improved with their input. So, it's a difficult moment. I mean, there is actually a government panel just, come out with this, documents setting out how this will work with foreign residents. This is not tourism. And they are going for the maximum number they've agreed they can take. And, it's trying to make it work for people in Japan already and for the people coming in. I think the story that Japan just does not accept foreigners is not really the case. I think it's just this awkward transition. And you only need to look around Tokyo. There are foreign workers all over the place, every convenience store. It's not a shock to see foreigners working in Japan anymore.
And it's a small proportion of the population, isn't it? I think it's only 3% of the Japanese population are made up of foreigners. But and there is this growing number of there's this growing reliance, isn't there, Fiona and Tyler, about how hospitality, farming and nursing, many of the areas of employment which struggle to attract long-term workers, they rely heavily on international workers. How much do you spot that when you're wandering around Tokyo or further afield?
Well, thankfully, I haven't been to a hospital in Tokyo, so I can't comment on what's happening in the emergency or maternity wards. But as Fiona said, I wouldn't say, I guess, convenience stores, I would say maybe more mass retail. I think if you go into some of the more mass, fashion chains, then you're going to see, foreign workers. They might be from, I would say predominantly Southeast Asia is where you're seeing workers from. Of course, on construction sites, it's very clear so that in the construction industry, and again, not a lot of time to get to rural Japan, and of course it's a great crisis here, and listen, Japan is not alone either in trying to either revive farms, sustain farms. This is not a new story, and also ensure that, of course, with a shrinking population, that you have the infrastructure, whether that's transport, whether that is security, whether that is medical, to also support the regions as well. But listen, and this is something which happens really the world over. You're talking about these sectors, Emma. Hospitality, farming, and certainly medical services. It is the same situation in Switzerland as much as it is in the UK.
Fiona, how much is this playing into the political world at the moment? Because there are reports everywhere. I'm just looking at the Japan Times now. Is that there is the sense that the freshly arrived Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi is feeling confident enough that she wants to pull a snap election as early as next month.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, her ratings are, it depends what you look at, but they're around 70%. This is very, very high. Of course, she gets the sort of boost from being a fresh face. But, if you look at what's been happening, internationally, regionally, Japan is now in the middle of this ferocious spat with China, which will reduce the number of Chinese tourists. It has to say China is discouraging its citizens from coming to Japan. But no, Takaichi is currently riding high. She's holding firm. She's unexpected. From the beginning, she is not a typical Japanese prime minister. She's a woman for a start. She doesn't come from a family of politicians. She's quite surprising, and I think some of the sort of labels that were put on her when she was elected as head of the LDP, people kind of denounced her for being too conservative, it hasn't really turned out that way. And yeah, the public at the moment, they like what she's doing, and it would be quite a good moment for her, because who knows what will happen. She also is in this slightly strange situation where she's in a coalition with the Japan Innovation Party, which is putting pressure on her to do certain things, like they basically are rooted in Osaka. They would like Osaka to be the second capital city of Japan. They want to reduce the number of seats in parliament. And I think what she'd like to do is bolster her position. There may be a broader coalition. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting start to the year. The plan currently, as you've seen in the papers, is she may dissolve the Diet at the end of January for an election early Feb. So that's coming quite soon. This
could be in the next couple of, I think the Japan Times is saying a January the 27th announcement. That's 2 weeks away. Let's bring in Tina Fordham on this one. Since Takaichi has come into power, how has she changed Japan's position in the world?
Well, she's certainly focused minds with her kind of steely demeanor, and she's really pissed off China, which is quite interesting. As a person who is living and breathing geopolitics and sees everything through that lens, the tensions between Japan and China are really meaningful. She's been quite bold, I think, in not shrinking from it. There is a cost to Japan to doing so, and remember that Japan changed its constitution some years ago. But that's where developments like Donald Trump announcing that he's going to increase military spending in the U.S., which is already the highest in the world by a significant margin, puts more pressure on China. And Japan, therefore, is in a very interesting moment. It is bold what the new prime minister is doing, but I think that I have a big respect for her for doing it.
Tokyo Bureau, does it feel bold where you are?
Does it feel bold on a Sunday windy evening? No, but I think if you look at Japan Inc., if you look at of course the big multinational industrial players, we're talking about the Mitsubishis, the Kawasaki's, etc. It would have been, I don't know, Fiona, not quite unthinkable, but as recently as 5 or 6 years ago, there was one moment when Japan was potentially going to go and sell submarines rather famously, but it turned into a huge flop to Australia. And then it sort of scampered away. But now they've gone and signed and will be delivering a number of frigates to Australia, and you now have New Zealand also looking at the same frigates as well. So I think that and of course we're talking about the pointy end of Japan. This is a completely new development now, and economically in terms of making sure and we're talking about also this is not a case of ships that are then being built in a shipyard in Indonesia and then going on to Australia. These are coming off of shipyards here. There'll probably be some technology transfer as well. There will be manufacturing, in Australia. But this, I think the view from here would be a positive one if you're looking at what this means for jobs, what this means for innovation, and also, of course, what this means for Japan's position in the region, I should say. Fiona?
Well, I mean, it's certainly a good point to talk about Japaning, and there'll be a slight panic. Nobody wants this kind of argument from an economic point of view, but nor will China. I mean, they need Japan too. So, it's a very risky strategy for both. I think Xi Jinping obviously trying to put pressure on South Korea to come out against Japan, which President Lee has so far refused to do. And actually, he's coming here next week. He's coming to Nara, which is the Prime Minister's hometown. And I think he's been very careful. He has not spoken against China, but nor has he criticised Japan. So I think that's also interesting. And I think it's a general recognition in the region that China is a big strategic challenge for everyone, and that certainly includes Japan. And that was recognised well before this spat broke out. They've always had to, contend with China's massive expansion and its military expansion, which is obviously absolutely off the scale.
Nina, here in London.
Yeah, well, in terms of sort of bringing in the ever-changing international world order, Japan, obviously, as Tyler and Fiona are quite right to point out, is still a huge manufacturing base, whereas here in Europe, one of the reasons that, Europe is really losing its voice on the international stage is because they have surrendered a lot of manufacturing, but Japan still holds its own up there against China, the United States, and it's above Germany. So that's very significant. And then, as you were just saying before, we're currently realising in the first 3 weeks of this new year that Donald Trump is essentially asking allies to choose between allegiances, in terms of business allegiances, international allegiances with the United States and the other rising superpower, China. And obviously, Japan, with its new prime minister, finds itself in a very, very interesting pincer point there. And it seems as though, obviously, she's going to have to throw her lot in with America.
Tyler, we're approaching the bottom of the hour already, and we haven't even let you go out for your first aperitif of the evening. What's on the cards now? You've got the hair, you've got a tummy full of burger. You're ready and raring to go. What's next?
Well, this week, a couple of things, and this is I don't want to give away too many secrets, but we're looking at some development ideas. Maybe I'll go as far as saying that. I think we need a cafe in Tokyo. So let's see where that lands this week, both from real estate, but also from design development as well. And then going back to my column, I'm doing a run around with Mom this week. So the Shiseido Parlor will get rebooked. Fiona's already we've already had a pre-tour of the Park Hyatt before it reopened, but it's officially up and running. I'm going to go and check that out for 2 days, and then of course it's a lot of meetings with our partners over here as well. It's that start of the year. There is that real sense, because obviously Japan does Christmas very well, but doesn't have the same meaning that it certainly does in other corners of the world. But there is that sense of just everywhere you go, it is a new year here, and it has more resonance somehow than just maybe the niceties of saying Happy New Year. You really get the sense that this is about sort of kicking things off. And of course, there's another component, of course, of Japan. In many ways, there is sort of the new business year. Of course, starts at the end. Well, at the start of what would be our Q2.
And Fiona, what are you up to this week? Are you scouting for cafe locations?
That sounds like a very nice week. Wouldn't that be wonderful? Yeah, I'm just thinking about, Tyler's absolutely right, that the new year, really, it takes a while to crank up here. And actually, I was passing my local shrine, and it's where everybody goes at the beginning of the year. They're hoping for good luck. And the shrine nearest to me is very popular with anyone who runs a business. And the queue was down the road. People are still getting their New Year prayers in. So yeah, that's going to be that as of Tuesday, actually, people will be back at their desks, and there's a lot happening. Yeah, well, I'll be joining some of the meetings, and I'm going to Totori towards the end of the week, actually.
That's why my flight got windy today. It's suddenly just sort of hitting the coast of Japan. At Totori, that's where it sort of get a bit roller coasterish.
Yeah, that is a windy side of Japan. It's the Japan sea coast. We're on the other coast here, and I'm going to see a new ASICS factory. They're ramping up domestic production, which is a good sign.
There you go. More made in Japan footwear for everybody.
Excellent. Finally, speaking of shrines of a different kind, Tyler, room 4701, is it ready for you yet?
Well, listen, I hope so. I mean, I didn't see 4701. I've seen its versions of room 4701. These are the kind of the corner sort of mini suites at the Park Hyatt. It was looking pretty good. I mean, I think that everyone who has been fearful that they've completely transformed the hotel, not the case. I mean, thankfully, even when they built it the first time, they bought, I think, thousands of kilometers of the same mint carpet. So a lot of the classic tones are still there. I think they were probably out in a big warehouse in Saitama somewhere. So that is the great thing about it. So much has changed, but it's the same codes. Much of it is just reupholstery. There's one or two mini surprises, but generally all good. Anyway, there'll be a full follow-up report, Emma and dear listeners, later in the week.
We can't wait to hear it. Editorial Director Tyler Brûlé and Tokyo Bureau Chief Fiona Wilson on the line from our Tokyo Bureau. Thank you so much. You're listening to Monocle on Sunday with me, Emma Nelson. In the studio, Tina Fordham and Nina dos Santos. We have a long list, don't we, of very bad things that have happened. I'm being absolutely as simple as we possibly can, but when you start to say what's happened this week, you have to say, well, we've got to talk about Greenland, we've got to talk about Iran, we've got to talk about Venezuela, and everything is happening at such speed. Tina, you've been taking furious notes since we've been on air. This is imparting clearly some wisdom about what's happening. What's been the big thing that struck you this week?
That the world is on the cusp of another wave of transformational change. Whether or not we like the means or the motives, the idea that Venezuela, which has been under a brutal regime for decades and has 30 million people, and possibly Iran, which is a much bigger country with over 70 million people, may rejoin the free world in some fashion, is simply staggering. I mean, I have been focused on revolutions and geopolitical change for 30 years. And it was the 1989 revolutions that got my career started. I went to live in Russia, a former Soviet Union. I lived in Azerbaijan, which borders Iran. You have 25% of the Iranian population is Azeri. And I am transfixed by what is happening. Of course, the path after this will be very bumpy, nonlinear, and everything else. But it's important to understand 100 million people may be about to rejoin the world.
It's an interesting fact that you came in and saying we're at the point of transformational change globally. And looking at the New York Times, it's responding that as well. There is this recognition, isn't there? It's headline today. The world is in chaos. What comes next? What they've done is they've gone to 5 writers whose worlds who are sort of taking new directions for the world, and the consensus is the world we know is ending. Something new has begun. Now we've seen headlines like this before. We've seen transformational change being mentioned before. Why is it different today?
Well, I have written a thesis on the geopolitics supercycle. I wrote it 3 years ago, and we actually did some empirical data collection that talked about the fact that you have more drivers linked to geopolitical change and weaker guardrails. And that's leading to more risk events. And as I say, this process started and gained momentum some years ago. What's happening now is more opportunism, and you could call that with Donald Trump opportunism, this extraction operation, which was unfold by any stretch of the imagination. But what's happening in Iran is really different. And I think it's important to understand, I've called this Vox Populi risk, and I started writing about it after the Arab Spring and then the right-wing populism in Europe. We do have waves and cycles of, sort of concentrated people power. And so what happens next in Iran, whether or not the United States decides to undertake some kind of operation to further undermine the regime, such as the nuclear facilities or military facilities, it's not necessarily clear that that would bring about the desired result, because these kinds of transitions are really impossible to direct from the top down. And I do think that's lost in our conspiracy theory, low trust laden kind of lens. This has happened before. It will happen again. And nothing happens from out of left field. There are actually very few black swan events. Iranians have been trying to overthrow this regime in earnest for some time, and they've been brutally repressed every time. The reports are possibly a couple of thousand protesters murdered. What happens next is not predetermined.
It is several hundred in the last 3 days by all accounts, and there are reports coming out of hospitals in Iran saying that they are absolutely overwhelmed. Nina, your take on this idea that, the black swan events are incredibly rare, and we could have seen all of this coming. I think from the outside, if you just look at it superficially, the initial reaction was when Donald Trump got into power last year, is he broke the American system from the inside. He sort of reworked the government. Now he's set about doing that to the rest of the world.
Yes, that's right. I think, look, when the onset of the Ukraine war happened, it's now heading into its 4th year next month. Most people clever sort of thinkers sat around and thought, is this another 1930s moment? Is it a pre-World War II moment? Then Donald Trump got back into power last year and everybody thought, is this a pre-World War I moment, perhaps? Well, actually, it turns out that it's the dawn of a new age, get it? It's the new Monroe Doctrine, as Donald Trump has said. It's the Donroe Doctrine, and essentially what he's doing is he's bringing America back to a position of 1823, when, of course, James Monroe more or less said, look, we're a nascent country, but Europe, get out of our backyard, particularly Latin America. And you could argue, and Tim Marshall's written about this very eloquently, who, of course, wrote Prisoners of Geography and various other books in that franchise, today in the Sunday Times, where he's more or less saying what we're seeing here is a power struggle that's akin to the fading British Empire at the end of the 1800s, early 1900s, and a rising Germany. And the rising Germany would be China in Donald Trump's book. So essentially, we've got two great superpowers, and Donald Trump wants to use this dynamic to gain access to all of the resources that he needs to fund his high-tech economy. And when it comes to allies, you're either on his side or you're on China's side. But you can bet he's going to do what he can, not just to get hold of those resources that he needs for his country, but to also make sure that China doesn't get its hands on them or on any geography as well.
Tina, this is all about resources, isn't it? That, you look at what happened in Venezuela and you wonder, well, was regime change really at the top of Trump's list? Perhaps not, but the oil resources were clearly something that would bolster American coffers while their own supplies dwindle. But this Tim Marshall article is talking about a race for rare earth minerals will actually define the 21st century. I mean, we're only a quarter of a way through it already.
I mean, listen, it's not 1973. The U.S. now has energy independence and has had for some time. So I think it is a mischaracterization to say that what happened in Venezuela was strictly about oil. I certainly don't want to be, defending or explaining the logic of this administration, but I think the Tim Marshall argument and what Nina said is correct. It is about positioning the United States for dominance. And this is where the people who got kind of comfortable in some sloppy thinking about a tripartite world, I think, are wrong. It isn't just about the Southern Hemisphere. It isn't just about Trump kind of misunderstanding the size of Greenland because he looks at a Mercator map. It is about edging out China, and Russia looks incredibly weak after this. And, I think the United States has bitten off more than it can chew in many ways, having, demolished USAID and hollowed out the US State Department, where lots of qualified people, the people of my generation who did the democracy building around the world are now gone. They may not want to do nation building somewhere like Venezuela, but if they want to see those energy majors who gathered in a room in the White House on Friday ever think about going back, having been burnt badly in Venezuela, you're going to have governance and institutions and not starving people on the streets and the jails full of political prisoners.
There's an article in the Spectator this weekend. The former UK ambassador to the United States, Peter Mandelson, has said that in Caracas, Donald Trump did more in a day than orthodox diplomacy was able to achieve in the past decade. And going in and breaking stuff, I think we've mentioned here on Monocle Radio, the Pottery Barn principle,
yes,
but what Mandelson is trying to highlight is that Europe has found itself geopolitically increasingly impotent in all this in the last year.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one thing being a disruptor, but the real problem here is that the United States has sold Europe and the rest of the world a post-war construct since the end of the Second World War that encouraged other countries to buy into exactly those democratic systems and nation-building systems that US action has left in its wake that Tina was talking about. And the real problem here is that when you're talking about regime change in Venezuela in a sort of, let's face it, rather cack-handed fashion, you're not seeing any acknowledgement for international rules and laws. And at the same time, you've got a domestic struggle with Donald Trump's own people back in America playing out with what happened in Minnesota and the ICE agents shooting at a US citizen over there who lost her life. So you've got the spectre of other countries here in Europe writing, is America on the brink of civil war? Is it going to export wars that it's not really going to manage very well to other parts of the world? And it's a massive crisis moment for Europe that, of course, is many different disparate states that are held together in this sort of really uncomfortable political allegiance that's supposed to bring and secure peace. But now that whole union and the ethos of it that America helped create is now a question.
And we have to look to Greenland at this point, don't we? Because we have what geographically it's sort of more towards the United States, but so much part of the European project that when you look at the way that Donald Trump speaks about Greenland in the same way that Tyler might talk about going for a haircut, that idea of I can just nip in and pick up a country or I can pick up a region. This is, again, really challenging the European way of doing things.
Yes, and the impotence and the flailing about of the response is alarming. Donald Trump has said that he doesn't need international law. And of course, the European Union, its entire raison d'etre has been peace through bureaucracy. And so the lack of even a vocabulary for a response is striking. Having said that, Europe has had a lot of time and has been talking about Trump-proofing itself. Since Trump 1.0, it hasn't happened. The ECB president, Christine Lagarde, has been talking about Europe needing to find its geopolitical power. Despite all of this, I am quite bullish on Europe's prospects because we are incredibly rich and safe, and we need to marshal our competitiveness, and we also need to rise to challenges. I often cite a Harvard Business Review study that talks about zeitgeist leadership. This paper was from 15 years ago, but it talks about how the best CEOs are those who manage through the times, the zeitgeist. Well, European leaders need to adjust to manage through the times as well. I don't think that Donald Trump needs to militarily invade and annex Greenland because there is so much scope for a different type of agreement. But we're not hearing that from European leaders.
You're listening to Monocle on Sunday with me, Emma Nelson. Joining me in the studio, Tina Fordham and Nina dos Santos. And we have an editorial handbrake turn now as we head to Ljubljana, where Monocle's Ljubljana correspondent, our man in the Balkans, is on an ice rink. Good morning, Guy.
Good morning, Emma, and good morning, everybody. I've actually just stepped away from the ice rink because the weekend was playing a bit too loudly on the ice rink for anybody to actually hear what I was saying. But, small mercies, they often have some dreadful Balkan stuff playing. So, the weekend's a big improvement on that.
Don't say that too loudly, because you live listening. You live in that neck of the woods. So I would be polite about all cultural input.
I'm never polite about bad music, Emma.
I know that. I've spoken to you about that extensively, but not on the radio. Right, why are you at an ice rink? I mean, are we now sort of like incorporating Monocle Radio hits with babysitting duties, or what's going on?
Well, when Desi was talking about doing this weekend, my initial idea was I was going to be on the ski slopes at Karvavets, which is just outside Ljubljana, so it's our nearest mountain, in effect. But to be honest, Emma, the weather didn't look great, so I chickened out of doing a Monocle on Sunday at Karvavets, and I thought, okay, ice rink's a nice second best option. So here I am, avoiding the grommets taking me out, because there are two major dangers at the ice rink in Ljubljana. One is the very small children who skate right in front of you with zero warning whatsoever. And the other one is middle-aged men trying to relive their heyday as ice hockey players by doing extraordinary manoeuvres in front of you.
Which are more dangerous?
Could go either way. Obviously, if the middle-aged men fall on top of you, that's not great, because let's put it this way, they're not at their fighting weights, to put it mildly. But the grommets, they can just take you away from the knees, and that's it. And when you're adult height, you're going down.
Brilliant. Okay, are you an ice skater?
I skate recreationally, and I'm okay. I mean, the last piece to camera I did for the BBC from Zagreb Advent, I actually did on skates and managed not to fall over while doing quite a few takes of it. So I'm decent, but I'm not sort of, scrape to a stop in front of you, sending up a shower of shaved ice. So I'm not quite at that level, I'm afraid.
So you're just
pirouettes are out of the question, Emma.
Oh, that's such a shame, but you are showing off nonetheless. Well done. Thank you, Guy. I'm just asking Nina and Tina. Love saying that so much. Nina and Tina, are you ice skaters? I'm a zero, and no, not a damned chance will you get me doing that.
As a child, I was brought up doing all my grades and ice skating. My twin sister was much better than me, actually, so I eventually ended up giving up in my early teens.
Were you one of those grommets?
I love figure skating, yeah.
Were you one of those grommets that took out Guy, or were we doing the proper pirouettes?
No, I was doing the pirouettes.
Wow.
Over in Queensway.
Nina overachiever. This is wonderful. Did you actually compete?
No, at the end of the day, no. But as I said, that's the difficulty with being a twin, almost identical twin. One of you ends up being a lot better than the other one at one thing or the other, and, the other one ends up giving up. I gave up. Eventually, so did she. But, I suppose that's osteoporosis, kicking in.
Glorious. How about you, Tina? Are you an ice skater?
You actually asking about my childhood athletics. I come from Northern California, where ice skating isn't really the done thing. But I also was a girl in the 1970s when soccer fever really hit, and we had a lot of kind of aging European and even Pele football players coming around. And so I was the first wave of girls playing soccer, which, as you know, is not the done thing in Britain, but it was brilliant. So that was my brush with sporting prowess, being a really good defender.
Two sporty souls here in London. Guy, tell us what else is happening. You are actually ostensibly on the radio to tell us what's happening where you are. So tell us, what's happening where you are?
Well, I thought, because I was originally going to do skiing this weekend, I thought I would tell you where you can actually ski on a World Cup ski course for free, absolutely zero dosh whatsoever, because this is, as we all know, skiing can be quite an expensive activity. But if you go to Croatia, and specifically if you go to Sljeme, it's within the city boundaries of Zagreb, the capital, you can actually ski for free. And the season opened literally yesterday. And you can go up Sljeme on the cable car, which was renovated very expensively. We covered that in Monocle a couple of years ago. And the course for the last couple of years has been free, and somehow this had passed me by. But this year I've clocked the article saying, you can go and ski on Sljeme. It will cost you nothing. There is one catch, however. It says it's free for Croatian citizens. And I just wonder how hard they're going to be checking. If you're opening everything for free, and thereby, you're not going to have the ski passes, you're not going to have the staff selling, and so on and so forth. are you really going to bother checking everybody's really from around there? Is it a local ski slope for local people? This is what I'm wondering, and I may have to go and check it out.
You may have to check it out, and wondering where you hide your ID and your salopette.
Well, quite so. I mean, normally, when I'm doing my skiing, I don't have one of those ski jackets with the slot for your ski pass in them, but it works quite well from putting it in my hip pocket, and I do a little, it's like the time warp. I do a little jump to the left, and that seems to activate the gates on the ski lifts.
Amazing. The pictures you're painting for us today, Guy, are spectacular. Wonderful. Right, let's talk about, look, we're talking about hospitality, tourism, leisure here, and Croatia. Tell us a little bit more about the fact that Croatia really was a wonderful place to go a few years ago when just post-COVID it was opening up and they were desperate to get the industry and the market open. And then in the last couple of months and years, people have said, actually, if you do go to Croatia now, there's scant space for anybody to actually enjoy themselves. Croatia's tourism is growing.
It is indeed, and the figures are just in for 2025. So the end of last week, these figures came out. 110 million overnight stays last year in Croatia. And it reflects the fact that tourism makes up more than a fifth of the GDP in Croatia. And the problem is, though, that all of that tourism really is concentrated in July and August, and it's concentrated in a few places. I mean, when you look at where they're going, it's primarily the Istrian coast, then what's known as Split Dalmatia County, which takes in Split and Dubrovnik, a couple of other coastal areas as well. So you're seeing that a few areas are getting all of these tens of millions of tourists in a very short space of time. And that's the issue for them. And the reason I was looking at Zagreb Advent again this year was it's one of the efforts that they're trying to do to spread the tourism bounty out, not just over the year, but also to different places. Because when you look at where the locations which are getting the most tourists, Zagreb, for example, is conspicuous by its absence. So they're aware that moving people around would be good if people want to continue to have a good experience in Croatia when they come on holiday.
Tina, you want to come in?
Well, so I spent my summer holiday in neighbouring Montenegro, which is highly recommended, much less visited, has medieval Venetian architecture because it was part of the Venetian Republic, and altogether delightful, and still with that incredibly turquoise, clear Adriatic Sea. So top tip from me, don't go to Croatia, go to Montenegro.
Guy, are you going to stand up for Croatia now?
I think it depends. Well, I would say don't go in July and August. But if you go in, say, June, September, October, May, it's absolutely beautiful. And again, steer clear of the main tourist traps. If you do go to Dubrovnik in high summer, it is going to be extremely unpleasant, not just crowded, but unbelievably hot. And if you're in a medieval walled city, when the temperatures are pushing 40 degrees, you're going to feel it. So I'd just advise to be sensible. Go to the mountains in Croatia in July and August. That'd be a good idea. Don't go to the Istrian coast. Go up the hills to a town like Motovun, which has got lovely vineyards and truffle hunting at various times of the year, but also has a film festival in the summer every year. And you're up at a little bit of altitude, and that makes all the difference. So I suppose it's not following the herd is the key to having a good experience in Croatia. Montenegro, on the other hand, by the way, Emma, it's definitely benefited from the fact that a lot of Russians aren't going there anymore, so it is a bit quieter than it was.
Speaking of unusual places to go on holiday, there's an article in I think it's in the Sunday Times today, which talks about how, well, this is the idea of over-tourism, but pushing it into different directions. If you are, I don't know, Guy, if you're a viewer of Emily in Paris, it has sadly escaped me, but apparently a nunnery in Rome is becoming the most deliciously attractive place to go. Let's talk about this a little bit in this room. I mean, the idea of you, Tina, you've done nuns, haven't you?
Well, no, I haven't, but I explored the option, and I can definitely see the appeal of a complete kind of self-isolation and the purity of non-talking, only singing, mental space. And when I looked at it, it was some years ago, and I think they're onto something. Simplicity And again, a kind of a purity element is very appealing.
Having said that, if you came out a week later, it would feel like the film 28 Days Later, wouldn't it? At the rate the world is going. I used to live in Italy for several years, actually. And I actually studied in Italy in another one of the cities which is famous for pilgrimages. And these institutions that this Times article is talking about, this nunnery that's been made famous by Emily in Paris, now decamping to Rome, there's actually quite a lot of them across the whole of the country. There's about 3,000 of them. And that makes sense if you think about these sort of being refuges for pilgrims. But the reality is that obviously church attendance is falling around the world. Fewer and fewer people are making their way towards religious sites in Italy. And this is a good way actually for the Catholic Church to, get people back on board and get some money.
It's the way that they're doing it is delicious. They are saying, okay, look, the rates to stay are not so high, and I think there was one nun who said it keeps a wolf from the door, and also it means that monks and nuns can meet the public without having to engage too closely with them. Guy, do you have this where you are at all?
I've done it in Rome actually. So I stayed at Domus Helena in Rome a couple of years ago. Because we were looking at, our son wanted, for his 18th birthday, we said, what do you want? And he didn't want stuff, he wanted a trip. And he said, Rome would be good. So we worked it out and then looked at the hotel prices and we thought, oh gosh, what have we done here? And somebody gave us a tip that you could go to a website called monasterystays.com. And
everyone's writing this down.
Yeah, Monastery Stays. It's a really clunky website, but it lists all of the religious houses in Rome where you can stay. And they are spectacularly located, a lot of them. So, for example, Domus Helena is 10 minutes walk from the Colosseum and about 10 minutes walk from Roma Termini station. So it's about as ideal as you can possibly get. And you're not dealing with the kind of shonky city centre, shabby hotels that abound in Rome, or the sort of big international names, a lot of which are quite a long way from the city. You're actually right at the heart of things, and you do find yourself sharing breakfast with nuns, and just depending on the establishment, Domus Helena, honestly, it's more like a Premier Inn with a few nuns wandering the hallways, but some of the others do have a much more religious feel to them, and you can join Mass at various times, or prayers in the morning if you want that sort of experience of Rome. You can do it, but I thought it was marvellous.
Guy, it sounds as if you're just about to be run over by everybody on the ice rink. We shall leave you there. Guy de Launey in Ljubljana, about to be attacked by a load of children. Thank you so much for joining us. We have 1 minute left. I mean, this idea of being in sort of Domus Helena in Rome sounds rather glorious, but does one have to behave oneself while one is with the nuns, one wonders?
Well, one would hope, but it's not just the monastery stays. Pilgrimage interest has spiked. And actually, church attendance is going up. Church of England attendance is falling, but younger people are interested in church attendance. And so the kind of, spirituality element, reaction to tech, may that gather momentum.
Nina, we've got 30 seconds.
Well, look, I mean, I think it was wonderful there to have a little detour into something that, has lasted for generations, thousands of years. I've definitely written down monasterystays.com, and I used to live in Rome and I didn't know about that. So, that was a really nice note to end on from this wild world.
From the Park Hyatt in Tokyo to Domus Helena, that was our hour on Monocle on Sunday. Thank you so much to all my guests, Nina dos Santos, Tina Fordham, Tyler Brûlé, Fiona Wilson and Guy de Launey. I hope he survives the ice rink. Thanks to the producers, Mariella Bevan and Desi Bandley, and the studio engineer today was Mariella Bevan. I'm Emma Nelson. Monocle on Sunday is back next week, but until then, goodbye. Thank you for listening. Enjoy your weekend.